Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Nutley High School's fall production of the Laramie Project. Thank you for being here tonight. At this time, we ask you to please silence all cell phones and electronic devices. Please refrain from the use of flash photography, as it can be really distracting to the actors on stage. I just want to say a quick thing that what you're about to see is a true story. The actors on the stage are going to be portraying over 80 different roles of real people who lived through this event. So you'll kind of get used to how the structure of the play works. They'll be putting on and taking off different costume pieces that represent different characters in the show, so that'll be an easy way for you to kind of follow who's who. Obviously, due to the sensitive nature of the material of the show and the subject matter, there is some strong language at certain points, so it may not be appropriate for very young children, so just like to give that warning out to everybody. And there will be a 15-minute intermission where refreshments will be sold, and if you didn't see on your way in already, we do have a donation place for the Matthew Shepard Foundation, which motto is Embracing Diversity. You can learn more about them at matthewshepard.org. Please feel free, if you haven't already done so, to make a donation which promotes diversity and education and everything for LGBTQ rights. I'm very, very proud of the work that these students have done in a very, very short period of time. They really took a lot of ownership of this production, both with the direction and working behind the scenes and at the back of the house. So I'm very, very proud of their work, and I hope you enjoyed the Laramie Project. Thank you very much.
The members of the Tectonic Theater Project traveled to Laramie, Wyoming, and conducted interviews with the people of the town. During the next year, we will return to Laramie and conduct over 200 interviews. The play you are about to see is edited from those interviews and journal entries by members of the company and other found texts. Company member, Iradi.
My first interview was with Detective Sergeant Hayley of the Laramie Police Department. At the start of the interview, he was sitting behind his desk, sitting something like this. I was born and raised here. My family is third generation. My grandparents moved here in the early 1900s. We've had basically my daughter makes her fourth generation. Quite a while. It's been a good place to live. Good people, lots of space. Now, all the towns in southern Wyoming are spaced and laid out because of the railroad came through. It was how far they could go before having to refuel and rewater, and Laramie was a major stopping point. That's why the towns are spaced so far apart. One of the largest states in the country and the least populated.
There's so much space between people and towns here.
Rebecca Hilliger, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming.
You have an opportunity to live a happy life here. I've come to realize that the people here are a lot nicer than they were in the Midwest, where I used to teach, because they're happy here. They're glad the sun is shining, and the sun shines a lot here.
What you have is, you have your old-time traditional type ranchers. Laramie's been the hub where they come for their supplies and stuff like that.
Stewardship is one thing all our ancestors taught us.
Eileen Egan, rancher.
If you don't take care of your land, then you ruin it, and you lose your living. So you, first of all, have to take care of your land and do everything you can to improve it.
I love it here.
Doc O'Connor, limousine driver.
You couldn't put me back in that mess out there back east. Best thing about it, the climate. Cold, wind. You say the Wyoming wind will drive a man insane, but it don't bother me. Well, some of the times it bothers me, but most of the time it doesn't.
And then you've got the university population.
I moved here from living in a couple of big cities.
Philip Dubois, president of the University of Wyoming.
I loved it there, but you'd have to be out of your mind to let your kids out after dark. And here in the summertime, I live in a station after 11, and I don't think about it twice.
And then you have the people who live in Laramie, basically.
I moved here from rural Texas.
Becky Dennis, Laramie resident.
Not Laramie. If you don't know a person, you definitely know someone they know. So you can only wonder who knew that most. For me, I love it. I love to go to the grocery store because I get to meet 4, 5, or 6 people every time I go. I don't mind people know about my business because what's my business? My business is basically good.
I like the trains too. They don't bother me. Well, some of the times they bother me, but most of the time they don't. Even though one goes by about 13 minutes about where I live.
Doc actually lives up in Bossler, but everybody in Laramie knows him.
They
He's
used to carry,
also not really a doctor.
they used to carry cattle, them trains, but now all they carry is diapers and cars.
I grew up in Cody, Wyoming.
April Silva, university student.
Laramie, it's better than where I grew up. I'll give it that.
It's a good place to live. Good people, lots of space. Now, when the incident happened with that boy, a lot of press people came down here. And sometimes some of them would follow me out to the crime scene. And it was a beautiful day. You know, absolutely gorgeous day. Real clear and crisp, and the sky was that blue, you know. That blue that you'll just never be able to paint because it's just sky blue. And the mountains in the background, and a little snow on them. And this one reporter, lady, person, she came up to me and she said,
Well, who found the boy? Who was out here anyway?
and I said, well, this is a popular area for people to run. Mountain biking is big up here too. Horseback riding is just as well because, you know, it's close to town. And she said,
Who in the hell would want to run out here?
and I'm thinking, lady, you're missing the point. You know, all you gotta do is turn around, see the mountains, listen to the birds, breathe in the air, just take in what's around you. And the reporters were just nothing but the story. And you know, I didn't feel insulted, I didn't feel judged. I felt they were stupid. You know, they're missing the point. They're just missing the whole point.
It's hard for us to talk about Laramie now. Tell you what Laramie is for us.
Jedediah Schultz.
If you would have asked me before, I would have told you that Laramie is a beautiful town. Secluded enough that you would have your own identity. A town with a strong sense of community. Everyone knows everyone. A town with a personality that most larger cities are stripped of. Now, after Nadia, I would say that Laramie is a town defined by an accident, a crime, where we've become Waco, we've become Jasper. We're a noun, a definition, a sign. We may be able to get rid of that, but it will sure take a while.
Journal entries. Member of the company, Andy Paris.
Moises called, saying he had an idea for his next theater project. But there was a somberness to his voice. So I asked what it was all about, and he told me that his next project would be based around Wyoming.
Stephen Belver.
Lee told me the company was going down to Laramie and that they wanted me to come. But I'm hesitant. I have no real interest in prying into the town's unraveling.
Amanda Gronage.
I've never done anything like this before in my life. How do you get people to talk to you, and what do you ask?
Moises Kaufman.
The company has agreed we should go down to Laramie for a week and interview people. Now, I'm a bit afraid about taking 10 people on a trip of this nature. I've made some safety precautions. No one works alone. Everyone has cell phones. Now, I've talked to Rebecca Hilliker. She's the head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming. She threw us a party on our first night and agreed to introduce us to some possible interviewees.
I must tell you that when I first heard that you were thinking of coming, when you first called me, I wanted to say you just kicked me in the stomach. Why are you doing this to me? But then I thought, that's stupid. You're not doing this to me, and more importantly, I thought about it, and there's been so much negative closure on this whole thing. And the students really need to talk. Ever since this happened, they started talking, the media descended, and then all dialogue stopped. You know, I really love my students because they're free thinkers. And you may not like what they have to say, you may not like their opinions because they can be very redneck, but they're honest and they're truthful. There's an excitement here, a dynamic that I've never had with my students in the Midwest or North Dakota because there was so much Puritanism that dictated how people looked at the world. And quite honestly, I would have an opinion I don't like, as opposed to none at all. And have that dynamic. In education, there's a student I think you should talk to. His name is Zanaya.
I've lived in Wyoming my whole life. Well, the family has been in Wyoming for generations. Now, when it came time for me to go to college, my parents couldn't afford to send me to college. I wanted to study theater, and I knew that if I was going to go to college, that I was going to have to get a scholarship. And so, they have this competition each year, this Wyoming State High School competition. And I knew that if I didn't take first place in duets, that I wasn't going to get a scholarship. So I went to the theater department of the university looking for good scenes. And I asked one of the professors, I was like, I need a killer scene. And he was like, here you go, this is it. And it was from Angels in America. So I read it, and I knew that I could bring that scene if I did a good enough job. And when the time came, I told my mom and dad so that they would come to the competition. Now, you have to understand, my parents go to everything. Every ball game, every hockey game, everything I've ever done. And so they brought me into their room and told me that if I did that scene, that they would not come to see me in the competition. Because they thought that it was wrong. That homosexuality is wrong. They felt that strongly about it that they didn't want to come see their son do probably the most important thing he'd done to that point in his life. And I didn't know what to do. I had never, ever gone against my parents' wishes. So I was kind of worried about it, but I decided to do it. And all I can remember about the competition is that when we were done, me and my partner, we came up to each other and we shook hands and there was a standing ovation. And oh man, it was amazing. And we took first place and we won, and that's how come I can afford to be here at the university, because of that scene. It was one of the best moments of my life, and my parents weren't there. And to this day, that was the one thing they didn't see me do. And thinking back on it, I think, why did I do it? Why did I oppose my parents? Because I'm not gay. So why did I do it? And I guess the only honest answer I can think of is that, well, I wanted to win. It was such a good scene. It was like the best scene. Do you know Mr. Kushner? Maybe you can call him.
Company member Greg Ferriole.
We arrived today in the Denver airport and drove to Laramie. The moment we crossed the Wyoming border, I swear I saw a herd of buffalo. Also, I thought it was strange that the Wyoming sign said Wyoming, like no place on earth, instead of Wyoming, like no place else on earth.
Company member Lyall.
I stopped at a local inn for my tea, and I waitress said to me, "Hi, my name is Debbie. I was born in 1954, and Debbie Reynolds is big back then, so yes, there's lots of us around. But I promise I was glad to keep her owl on the table."
Today, Lee tried to explain to me No avail, but chicken fried steak was.
Now, are you from Wyoming? Or are you just passing through? We're just passing through.
Company member Barbara Pitts.
We arrived in Laramie tonight. Just past the Welcome to Laramie sign, population 26,687. The first thing to greet us was Walmart. In the dark, we could be on any main drag in America, fast food chains, gas stations. But as we drove into the downtown area by the railroad tracks, the buildings still looked like a turn-of-the-century western town. Oh, and as we passed the University Inn, on the sign were amenities such as heated pool or cable TV usually touted. The sign said, "Hate is not a Laramie value."
Greg Fry.
I met today with two longtime Laramie residents, Alison and Marge, two social service workers who taught me a thing or two.
Well, what Laramie used to be like when Marge was growing up, well, it was mostly rural.
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed it, you know. My kids all had horses.
Well, there was more land. I mean, you could keep your pet cow, your horse, your little chickens, you know, just have a little bit of acreage.
Yeah, I crawled around the house about all together, did the housework while the kids were in school, and nobody could see me. If they got that close,
Well, then that's their problem.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I got the expression right. And you're all together?
well, yeah, honey, why we're closed?
Now, how's he going to use that in this play?
So, this was a big ranching town?
Oh, not just ranching. This was a big railroad town at one point. Before they moved everything to Cheyenne and Green River and Omaha. So now, well, it's just a drive-through spot for the railroad because even, what was it, in the 50s? Well, they had one big roundhouse and they had such a shop you could build a complete engine.
They did. My mom worked there.
Your mom working around house?
Yeah, she washed engines. Her name was Minnie. We used to, you know, sing that song for her. You know that song?
No, what song?
Run for the roundhouse, Minnie, they can't corner you there.
But I'll tell you, Wyoming is bad in terms of jobs. I mean, the university has the big whoop-de-doo jobs. But Wyoming, unless you're professional, well, the bulk of the people are working minimum wage jobs.
Yeah, I've either been in the service industry or bartending most of my life. Now, I know everyone in town.
And she does.
And I do. Now that I'll tell you, here in Laramie, there's a class distinction, and there always has been. What it is about the well-educated and the ones that are not. And the ones that are educated don't understand why the ones that are not don't get educated. That's why I told you before, my kids had a fight because their mom was a bartender. Never mind, I was the best damn bartender in town.
And she was.
That's not bragging, it's a fact.
But here in Laramie, if it weren't for the university, we'd just be SOL.
What's SOL?
Well, do I have to say it? Well, it's shit out of luck. Oh, Lordy, you got that on your tape? Boy, you are getting an education today.
Yeah, I guess I am. So, let me ask you, what was your response when this happened to Matthew Shepard?
Well, I've been close enough to the case to know most of the people. I have a daughter in the sheriff's department. As far as the gay issue, I don't give a damn one way or the other, as long as they don't bother me. And even if they did, I'd just say no thank you. That's the attitude of most Laramie population. They might poke one in the mouth if they were in our situation, you know? They've been drinking, but they just whistle on about their business. Laramie is live and let live.
I'd say that Marge probably knows a lot more, except she's even willing to say.
Well,
And we have to respect her for that.
where do you think you're going with this story?
Oh, well, we still haven't decided. When we're done, we're going to try to bring it back around to Laramie.
And there are parts I won't tell you.
Company member Andy Paris.
Today, for the first time, we met someone who actually knew Matthew Shepard. Trish Steger, owner of a shop in town, referred to him as Matt.
Matt used to come to my shop. That's how I knew him.
It was the first time I'd heard him referred to as Matt. Did he go by Matt to everyone?
Well, on the 2nd of October, I get a phone call around 10 after 7.
Doc O'Connor.
It was Matthew Shepard, and he said, "Can you pick me up at the corner of 3rd and Grand?" So anyhow, I pull up to the corner to see, guess who? Matthew Shepard. And he's standing there, 5'2", soaking wet, betcha 97 pounds tops. They say he weighed 110, but I wouldn't believe it. They also said he was 5'5" in the newspapers. This man, he was only 5'2", maybe even 5'1". So I pull up to the corner, and I'm going to go in steps so you can better understand the principle of the man. So he walks up, and I say, "Are you Matthew Shepard?" And he says, "Yeah, I'm Matthew Shepard." And I My name is Matt, and I am gay. And we are going to go to the gay bar. Do you have a problem with that? And I said, how are you paying? You see, Laramie doesn't have any gay bars. As a matter of fact, neither does Wyoming. So he was hiring me to take him up to Fort Collins, Colorado, about an hour away. Matt was a blunt little shit, you know what I'm saying? But he was straightforward. You see what I'm saying? Maybe gay, but straightforward. You see what I'm saying?
I don't know, how does any one person tell about another? You should really talk to my sister May. She was a good friend of Matthew.
We never called him Matthew, actually. Most of the time, we called him Choo Choo. Because we used to call him Matthew, and then we just called him Choo Choo. And whenever I think of Matthew, I always think of his incredible beaming smile. I mean, he'd walk in, he'd be like, you know, he'd smile at everyone. He just made you feel great. And he would like stare people down in the coffee shop. Because he always wanted to sit on the end seat so that he could talk to me while I was working. And if someone was sitting in that seat, he'd just sit there and stare at them until they left. Then he would claim his spot. But Matthew definitely had a political side to him. I mean, he really wanted to get into political affairs. That's all his big interest was, watching CNN and MSNBC. I mean, those are the only TV stations I ever saw his TV turned into. He was just really smart in political affairs, but not too smart on, like, common sense things. So he moves to Laramie to go to school.
Matthew was shy when he first came in.
John Peacock, Matthew Shepard, academic advisor.
To the point of being now, so I don't want to say. He was having some difficulties adjusting, but this was home for him, and he made that quite clear. And his mouthiness, his shyness gave way to a person who was excited to embark on this adventure. He was figuring out he was wanting to work on human rights, and when this happens, a person begins to bloom a little bit. He was starting to say, wow, there are opportunities here. Things I can do in this world. It can be important.
I did hear from Matthew about 48 hours before his attack. He told me that he joined the gay and lesbian group on campus, and he was enjoying it. You know, he was getting ready for Pride Week and whatnot. I mean, he was totally stoked about school. Yeah, he was really happy about being there.
And in retrospect, I can only say this in retrospect, of course. This is where Matt was heading, towards human rights, which only is the tragic irony of all this.
Let me tell you something else here. There's more gay people in Wyoming than meets the eye. I know for a fact. They're not particularly the what do you call them? The queens, the gay people, the queens, you know, the run around faggot type people. No. They're the ones that run around, throw bales of hay, jump on horses, brand them, and kick ass. You see what I'm saying? As I always say, don't screw with a Wyoming queer, because they will kick you in your ass. That's not the point of what I'm trying to say. I know a lot of gay people in Wyoming. I know a lot of people, period. I've been lived up here some 40-odd years. You see what I'm saying? Now, I don't think Wyoming people give a damn, one way or another, if you're gay or straight. That's what I just said. Doesn't matter. Now, if there's 8 men and 1 woman in a Wyoming bar, then you stop and think, who's getting what? You see what I'm saying? Now, geez, it don't take a big intelligent mind to figure that one out.
My understanding when I first came here
Catherine Connolly.
is that, okay, I was the first out lesbian or gay faculty member on campus. And that was in 1992, so that wasn't that long ago. I was asked in my interview what my husband did. And so I came out then. Do you want a funny story? When you first get here, there's all these things you have to do. And so I was in my office, and I noticed that this woman called. I was expecting, you know, a health insurance phone call, something like that. And so I called her back, and I could hear her. She's on her keyboard, clicking away. And so I said, "This is Kathy Connolly returning your phone call." And she said, "Oh, it's you." And I thought, this is bizarre. And she said, I hear you're gay. I hear you are. And I said, uh-huh. I'm one too. Not a couple, just a person. And so she was a kind of lesbian who knew I was coming, and she wanted to come over and meet me immediately. And she later told me that there were other lesbians that she knew who wouldn't want to be seen with me, that I would irreparably taint them. Just to be seen with me can be a problem.
When I came here, I knew it was going to be hard as a gay man.
Jonas Loneger.
But I kept telling myself, people should live where they want to live. And there would be times when I'd go down to bars in Denver, and people would ask me where I'm from. So I'd say, Laramie, Wyoming. And I met so many men, so many gay men down there from Laramie. And they're all just like, how can you live there? This is no place where I can live. I had to get out. Rah, rah, rah. But every once in a while, there'd be one guy. Oh gosh, I miss Laramie. I really do. I love it. That's where I want to live. And they would get this starry-eyed look. And I would say, if that's where you want to live, do it. I mean, imagine if more gay people live in small towns. But that's easier said than done.
Today, we are moving from our motel and heading for the Best Western.
Moises Kaufman.
My hope is that it is a better Western.
Amanda Grant.
Today we divided up to go to different churches in the community. Moises and I were given a Baptist church. So he greeted us at the church himself, and this is what I remember from the sermon this morning.
My dear brothers and sisters, I am here today to bring you the word of the Lord. Now I have a simple truth that I tell to my colleagues that I am going to tell it to you today. The word is either sufficient or it is not. Scientists tell me that human history is 5 billion to 6 billion years old. Now what's a billion years, give or take? The Bible tells me that human history is 6,000 years old. The word is either sufficient or it is not.
The sociology of religion in the West,
Stephen Mean Johnson, Unitarian minister.
the dominant religious traditions in Laramie, Catholic, Baptist, Mormon now, they are everywhere. Not just in Salt Lake, everywhere. They're like jam on toast out here.
The Mormon church has a little different thing going on that irritates some folks.
Doug Laws, State Ecclesiastical, the Mormon Church.
And that is that we absolutely believe that God still speaks to man. We don't believe that people wrote it in the Bible. God speaks to us today, and we believe that. We believe that the prophet of the church has the authority to receive inspiration and revelation from God.
So the spectrum would be on the left side, so far left from me there by myself, is me and the Unitarian Church. Unitarians are, by and large, humanists, many of whom are actually atheists. I mean, we're not even sure we're actually a religion. Now, on the right is the Catholic Church, and Father Roger, who's a Catholic priest. God bless him. He did not equivocate at all when this happened. He actually hosted vigil for Matthew that one night.
I was really jolted because, you know, when we did the vigil, we wanted to get other ministers involved. And we called some of them, and they were not going to get involved. And it was like, we are going to stand back and wait and see which way the wind is blowing. And that angered me immensely. We are supposed to stand out as leaders. I thought, wow, what's going on here?
God has set boundaries, and one of our responsibilities is to learn. What is it that God wants? So, you study Scripture, you look to your leaders, then you get a feel for what the bounds are. Now, once you kind of know what the bounds are, then you get a feel for what's out of bounds. There's a proclamation that came on family A family is defined as one woman and one man and children. That's a family. That's about as clear as you can state it. There's no sexual deviation in the Mormon church. No leniency. We just think it's out of bounds.
I warn you, you will be mocked, you will be ridiculed for the singularity of your faith. But you let the Bible be your guide. It's in there, it's all in there.
Now, the Christian pastors, many of the conservative ones, were silent on this. Conservative Christians like to use the Bible, and they say to the rest of the world, oh, it says it here in the Bible. And most Americans believe, and they really do, that the Bible is the Word of God. And how are you going to argue with that?
I am a biblicist, which means the Bible does not need me to be true. The Bible is true whether I believe it or not. The Word is either sufficient or it is not.
I arrived in Laramie on September 15th. A drowned, tumbleweed, cement factory. And I thought to myself, what the hell am I doing in Wyoming? 3 weeks later, I found out what I'm doing in Wyoming.
I had breakfast this morning with a student named Zubaydah. She's an Islamic feminist who likes to do things her own way.
I've lived in Laramie since I was 4. Yes. My parents are from Bangladesh, and 2 years ago, because I'm Muslim, I decided to start wearing a scarf. That's changed my life here in Laramie a lot. Like, people say things to me like, why do you have to wear that thing on your head? Like, when I go to the grocery store, I'm not looking to give people Islam 101, you know what I mean? So I'll be like, well, it's part of my religion. And they'll be like, this is the worst part, because they'll be like, I know it's part of your religion, but why? And how am I supposed to go into this whole doctrine of physical modesty and my personal relationship with the Lord standing there with my pocket chips, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's so unreal to me that people are writing a play about Laramie. People are going to be on stage in New York in a play about my town. They're going to be on stage in New York acting like they're us. That's so weird. And I'm here in Laramie working with a theater company. I went to your husband's church this Sunday, and I was extremely interested in talking to him about recent events.
Well, I doubt if he'll want to talk to you. He has very biblical views on homosexuality. He doesn't condone that kind of violence, of course, but he doesn't condone that kind of lifestyle either. You know what I mean? And he was just bombarded with press after this happened. The media has been just terrible about this whole thing.
Oh, I know. I really understand. It must have just been terrible.
Oh, yes. I think we're all just hoping that this just goes away.
Well, do you think I can call back and speak with your husband just briefly?
Well, all right. You can call him back tonight at 9.
Thank you so much. I'll do that.
Today, Margaret and I went to the Fireside Bar, which was the last place Maggie was seen in public.
Fireside. Definitely feels like a college bar with a couple of pool tables and a stage area of karaoke. Still, the few regulars in the late afternoon were hardly all the crowd.
The first person we talked to was Matt Nixon, the owner.
My great-great-grandfather moved here in 1862. He owned Laramie's first opera house, the Old Blue Front. And in 1870, my grandma Louisa Swain cast the first woman's ballot in any free election in the world. And that's why Wyoming is the equality state. You know, I want to reestablish my bar business at the Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Time Emporium. I want to own a restaurant. I want to own a pool hall. I want to own a gift shop. I want to do all this shit, you know? Every night, ladies' night. So the Fireside is the first step towards the Old Blue Front Opera House, Good Time Emporium.
So what about the night Matthew Shepard was here?
We had karaoke that night. 20 or 30 people in here, and he was just sitting, actually right where you're sitting. Just hanging out, I mean. If there's anyone you want to talk to, it'd be Matt Galloway. He was the kid that was bartending that night. You'd have to meet him. His character stands for itself. Hey, is Galloway bartending tonight?
Okay, I'm gonna make this brief, quick, get it over with. But it'll be everything, faction, just the facts. Here we go. 10 o'clock, I clock in. Usual time, Tuesday nights. 10:30, Matthew Shepard shows up. Alone, sits down, and orders a Heineken.
Phil LaBrie, friend of Matthew Shepard.
Matt likes to drink Heineken and nothing else. Heineken, even though you pay $9.50 for a six-pack, he always buys the same beer.
So, what can I tell you about Matt? If you had 100 customers like him, it would be the most perfect bar I've ever been in. Okay? And nothing to do with sexual orientation. Absolute mannerisms. Manners, politeness, intelligence. Taking care of me, as in tips. Everything, conversation, dress nice, clean cut. Some people, you know, sits down. Please, thank you. Offers intellect, you know? Within their vocabulary. So he kicks it there. Didn't seem to have any worries or like he was looking for anyone, just enjoying his drink and the company around. Now approximately 11:45, 11:30, 11:45. Aaron Mckinney and Russell Henderson come in. I didn't know their names then, but they're the accused. They're the perps. They're the accused. They walk in just very, you know, stone-faced, you know, dirty, grungy, rude, gimme, that type of thing. They walked up to the bar and, as you know, paid for a picture with dimes and quarters. Which is something, I mean, you don't forget. You don't forget that. $5.50 in dimes and quarters, that's a freaking nightmare. Now, Henderson and Mckinney, they didn't seem intoxicated at all. They came in, ordered a beer, took the picture back there in the pool room, and kept it themselves. Next thing I knew, probably half an hour later, I noticed them walking around. No beer, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm not going to ask them if they want another one, because obviously they just paid for a picture in dimes and quarters. I have a really good feeling they don't have any more money.
Romaine Patterson.
Money meant nothing to Matthew because he came from a lot of it. He would hand over his wallet in 2 seconds because money meant nothing. His shoes might have meant something. They say it was robbery. I don't buy it. Not even for an iota of a second.
Then a few moments later, I look over, and Aaron and Russell have been talking to Matthew Shepard.
Aaron said that a guy walked up to him and said that he was gay and wanted to get with Aaron and Russ.
Kristen Price, girlfriend of Aaron Mckinney.
And Aaron got aggravated with it and told him that he was straight and walked off. He said that is when he and Russell went to the bathroom, decided to pretend they were gay, get him in the truck, and rob him. They wanted to teach him a lesson not to come on to straight people.
Okay, no. They stated that Matt approached them. He came on to them. I absolutely, positively disbelieve and refute that statement. 100%. Refute it. I'm going to give you 2 reasons why. 1, character reference. Why would he approach them? Why them? He wasn't approaching anybody else in the bar. They say he's gay. He's a flaming gay. He doesn't come on to people like that. Bullshit. He's never come on to me. Hello? He came on to them. I don't believe it. 2, territorialism is the word I'll use for this. And that's the fact that Matt was sitting there and Aaron and Russell were in the pool room. Upon their first interaction, they were in the area that Matt had been in all night. So who approached who? By that.
But Matthew was the kind of person, like, he'd never not talk to someone for any reason. If someone started talking to him, he'd just be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. He didn't have any problem just striking up a conversation with anybody.
Matt did feel lonely a lot of times. Me knowing that and knowing how gullible Matt can be, he would have walked right into it. The fact that Matt was at the bar alone, without any friends, made him that much more vulnerable.
So, the only thing is, and this is what I'm testifying to, because, you know, I'm also basically the only GI witness in this case. Basically what I'm testifying to is that I saw Matthew leave. I saw two individuals leave with Matthew. I didn't see their faces, but I saw the back of their heads. And at the same time, Mckinney and Henderson were no longer around. You do that.
Actually, I think the DJ was the last one to talk to him on his way out that night. Gave him a cigarette or something. Her name is Shadow.
I was the last person that Matt talked to before I left the fireside. I was just bullshitting around my shit, and he stopped me. I stopped him, actually. Now, and he was like, hey, Shadow, da-da-da. And I was like, hey, man, you getting ready to leave? And he's like, yeah, man, and this and that. But then I noticed them two guys. They stood outside. You could see. You could see it. They were standing right there. And, you know, he was looking over to them, and they were looking back at him. And I stood and talked to Matt for a good 10 minutes? Yeah. And you seen them guys getting, like, worried to leave and shit. When they took off, it was in a black truck. A small truck. Three of them sat in the front, Matt in the middle. I didn't think nothing of it. I didn't know them guys was gonna be like that.
A friend of Aaron McKinney.
Oh, I've known Aaron a long time. Aaron was a good kid. I liked Aaron a lot. That's why I was so shocked when I heard this. I'm like, I know he was living out far at his trailer house. That's what he told me, with his girl. And we started dating that summer. Because they got pregnant as soon as they started dating. Because, you know what? They had a kid. He was only 21 years old, but he was running around with a kid. You see, that's the kind of person Aaron was. Just like he was always dressed in big clothes, you know? Like Tommy Hilfiger, Polo, Gucci. At the time I knew him, he was just a young kid trying to, you know, just want to fit in. Acting tough, acting cool. But, you know, you could get in his face about it, and he would back down like he was some scared little kid.
Sherry Anenson.
Russell was just so sweet. He was the Eagle Scout. His whole presence was just quiet and sweet. I mean, so of course it didn't make sense to me that, and I know, like, people snapping whatever, but it wasn't a real intimate relationship. I was just his landlord. I did work at the truck wagon with him too. And I remember, like, at the Christmas party, it was pretty much just party time. And he was just totally drunk out of his mind. He wasn't real belligerent or anything, but he didn't change. His personality didn't change. He was still the same little meek Russell. I remember him coming up to me and asking me, Sherry, when you get a chance, can I please have a dance? Which we never did get around to doing. Now I just want to shake him, you know? What the heck were you thinking? What were you thinking?
Thanks. I've not before times I've taken visitors. Clearly it's a very powerful personal experience. It's almost like a travel site now. Up there, so stark and so empty. You can't help but think of Matthew up there for 18 hours, the freezing temperatures. And the view up there is so isolated. And God, my God, why have you forsaken me, comes to mind.
Company member Greg Iradi.
Phil Labrie, a friend of Matthew Shepard's, took us to the fence this morning. I broke down the minute I touched it. I felt such a strong kinship with this young man. On the way back, I made sure no one saw me crying.
Liaison Towski.
Greg was crying on the way back. I couldn't bring myself to tears, but I felt the same way. This afternoon, I have an interview with Aaron People. He's the boy that found Matthew out there at the fence. I don't think I'm up for it now. I'll see if someone else can do it.
Well, I took off on my bicycle around 5 p.m. on Wednesday from my dorm. I just kind of felt like going for a ride, you know. I went up to the top of Cactus Canyon. I'm not super familiar with the area, so on my way back down, I didn't really know where I was going. I was just sort of picking the way to go. Which now, I think back to it, makes me think, God wanted me to find it because there was no way I was going to go that way. So I was in some deep-ass sand, and I wanted to turn around, but I didn't. I kept going. I went along. There's this rock on the ground. I just drilled it and went over the handlebars and ended up on the ground. So I got up and was just kind of dusting myself off when I noticed something, which ended up to be Matt. And he was just lying there by the fence. And I just thought it was a scarecrow. I thought, hey, Halloween's coming up, must be a Halloween cat. So I got my bike, walked it around the fence that was there. It was a buck-type fence. And that's when I noticed something. As I got closer to him, I noticed his hair. And that was a major key to me noticing that it was a human being. It was his hair. So I just thought it was a dummy, seriously. I just thought it was a dummy. I even noticed the chest going up and down, and I just sort of thought it was some kind of mechanism. When I saw hair, I knew it was a human being. So I ran to the nearest house, and I just ran as fast as I could, and called the police.
I responded to the call.
Officer Reggie Flutie.
When I got there, at first the only thing that I could see was partially somebody's feet, so I got out of my vehicle and I raced over. I seen what appeared to be a young man, 13, maybe 14 years old, because he was so tiny, laying on his back there and tied to the bottom end of this fence. I did the best that I could. The gentleman that was lying there on the ground, Matthew Shepard, he was covered in dried blood, all over his head, dried blood underneath him. He was barely breathing. He was doing the best that he could. I was going to breathe for him, but I couldn't get his mouth open. His mouth wouldn't open for me. He was covered in, like I said, partially dried blood and dried blood all over his head. The only place that he didn't have any blood on him was on his face, where he'd been crying down his face. And his head was distorted, you know, it didn't look normal, like he had a real harsh head wound. I was working in the emergency room that night Matthew Shepard was brought in. I don't think any of us can remember seeing a patient in that condition for a long time. Those of us who worked in big city hospitals, but we have some people here who have not worked in big city hospitals. But it's not something you expect here. You expect these kind of injuries from like a car going down a hill at like 80 miles an hour. You expect to see this stuff from like gross injuries, this horrible, horrendous thing, but you don't expect to see this from someone doing this to another person. So when the ambulance said it was a beating, we knew.
There was nothing I could do. I mean, if there was anything I could have done to help him, I would have done it. There was just nothing. And I was yelling at him at the top of my lungs, just trying to get something out of him, like Hey, wake up! Hello? He didn't move. He didn't even flinch. He didn't anything.
He was tied to the fence, his hands thumbs out in what we call a cuffing position. The way we handcuff people. The way we handcuff criminals. He was tied with a real thin white rope. It went around the bottom of the pole about 4 inches up off the ground. His shoes were missing. He was tied so extremely tight that I had to use my boot knife to try and slip it between the rope and his wrist. I had to be extremely careful not to harm him any further.
Your first thought is, well, certainly you like to think that it's somebody from out of town that's just come through and eat somebody. You know, things like this happen. You know, shit happens, and it happens in Laramie. But when someone's been eating someone repeatedly, I think it's something that offends us. No, I think it's a good word. It offends us.
He was bound so tight, I finally got the knife through there. We rolled him over, and once we did that, he quit breathing immediately. So I rolled him back onto his back, and that was just enough of an adjustment. It gave me enough room to get the knife through there and cut him free. I seen the EMS unit trying to get to the location, and once the ambulance got there, we put a neck collar on him, put him on a backboard, and scooted him from underneath. Rob drove the ambulance to Envision Hospital's emergency room.
Now, the strange thing is, 20 minutes before Matthew came in, Aaron came in, and his girlfriend brought him in. Now, I guess he had gone to a fight later on that night back in town, so I'm working on errands when the ambulance brings in Matthew. Now, at this point, I don't know there's a connection at all. So I tell Aaron to wait, and I go and treat Matthew. So there's Aaron in one room of ER, and Aaron like 2 doors down. Now, as soon as we saw Matthew, we knew it was beyond his capabilities. So I called the neurosurgeon at Cedar Valley, and he was like on his way in an hour and 15 minutes.
They showed me a picture. Days later, I saw a picture of Matthew. I would never have recognized him.
And 2 days later, I found a connection, and I was very struck. There were 2 kids. They were both my patients, and there were 2 kids. I took care of both of them, of both their bodies. Now, I wonder if this is how God feels when he looks down at us. How we're all his kids. Our bodies, our souls. And I feel a great deal of compassion for both of them.
This is John Peacock, Matthew's academic advisor.
Well, the news reports started rolling out, but no names were mentioned. The brutality of the crime was mentioned either. All that was mentioned was a man. Laramie Man. Found beaten out on the prairie, basically. And later on that evening, they said his name. It's like, that's not the Matthew Shepard I know. That's not the person who I've been meeting with.
I was in the coffee shop,
Romaine Patterson.
and someone pulled me aside and they said, I don't know much, but they said there's been a young man who's been beaten in Laramie. And he said his name's Matthew Shepard. And he said, do you think that this could be our Matthew? Well, I said, yeah, it sounds like it could be Matthew. So I called up my sister Trish, and I said, tell me what you know. Because I'm like, I need to know anything you know, because I don't know anything.
So we talked to my sister on the phone, and that's when the whole story came up on Channel 5. It was just like, the boom.
And the news reports that just kept rolling out. His age, his description, it's like, oh my God.
And I felt sick to my stomach, just instantly sick to my stomach, and I had to tell Romaine, yes, it was Matthew, it was your friend.
Well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you it's overwhelming.
Matt Galloway.
Friday morning, I first find out about it. I go to class, walk out, boom, there it is. Brandon Iron. So immediately I drive to the nearest newsstand, pick up a copy of the Laramie Boomerang, because, I wanted more details. By that, go home. Before I can even open the paper, my boss calls me. He's like,
Did you hear about what happened?
I'm like, yeah.
Was he in the bar Tuesday night?
I go, yes. Yes, he was.
You've got to get down to the bar right now. We've got to talk about this. We've got to discuss what's going to go on.
By this time, I was starting to get upset, but the severity wasn't out yet.
It was Thursday afternoon.
Brulon Stacy at Poudre Valley Hospital.
I had just gotten a call, and they said, we have a beating victim from Wyoming. Okay, so for more information. There are the 2 or 3 reporters asking questions. We needed one spokesperson. As CEO, I will do that, and I will gather all the information that we can.
And then I watched the 10 o'clock news when they start to talk about the nature and the seriousness of it.
So I'm on the phone with Mickelson, and he's like,
We need to go to the arraignment so we can identify these guys. We got to make sure these guys were in the bar.
so we go to the arraignment.
Our focus today turns to Laramie, Wyoming, and the Albany County Courthouse, where Aaron James Mckinney and Russell Arthur Henderson are being charged with the brutal beating of Matthew Shepard, a gay University of Wyoming student.
Catherine Connolly.
The arraignment was on Friday, right around lunchtime. And I said, I'm just going. I just took off. It's down the street. So I walked a few blocks and I went. Has anybody told you about the arraignment? Okay. There were probably about 100 people from town and as many as news media. By that point, a lot more details had come out. The fact that the perpetrators were kids, local kids themselves, that everyone who's from around here has some relationship to, and what everyone was really, I think, waiting on pins and needles for what would happen when the perpetrators walked in. And what happened? There's 200 people in the room at this point. And they walked in their complete orange jumpsuits and their shackles. And you could have heard a pin drop. It was incredibly solemn. I mean, lots of people were teary at that point. Then the judge came in and did a reading. And there was a reading of the evidence that the prosecution has. And it's just a statement of facts. And the reading of the facts was,
The essential facts of the defendants, Russell Arthur Henderson and Aaron James Mckinney, met Matthew Shepard at the Fireside Bar, and after Mr. Shepard confided in his gay, the subjects deceived Mr. Shepard into leaving with them to a remote area. Upon arrival at said area, the subjects tied their victim to a buck fence, robbed him, tortured him, and beat him. Both defendants were later contacted by officers of the Laramie Police Department, who observed the inside of their pickup, a credit card, and a pair of black patent leather shoes belonging to the victim, Matthew Shepard.
I don't think there was any person who was left in the courtroom who wasn't crying at the end of it. I mean, it lasted 5 minutes, but it kept on getting more and more horrific, ending with,
Said defendants left the victim begging for his life. Sergeant Hank.
How could this happen? I think a lot of people just don't understand, and even I don't really understand how someone can do something like that. We have one of the most vocal populations of gay people in the state, and here in Laramie, it's pretty much live and let live.
Laramie resident Jeffrey Lockwood.
My secret hope is that from somewhere else. Then, of course, you can create that distance. We don't grow children like that here. Well, it's pretty clear we do grow children like that here.
so that was the arraignment. And my response was pretty catatonic. Not sleeping, not eating. Don't leave me alone right now.
More and more details came about motivations, sheer brutality, how this happened, and they're quite frankly the media descended and There's no time to reflect on it anymore.
Laramie, Wyoming, often called the gem city of the plains, is now at the eye of the storm.
Parents Mckinney and his son, Henderson, came from a forest in their town.
As a gay college student, lay hospitalized in critical condition after severe beating.
People like to think that what happened to Matthew was an exception to the rule, but it's an extreme version of what happens in our schools on a daily basis.
It is our business, as Matthew Shepard knew, and all his friends know, to be gay in cowboy country.
It was huge, yeah, and we're talking hundreds of reporters, which makes a huge dent in the town's population. News reporters everywhere, trucks everywhere on campus, everywhere in the town. And we're not used to that type of attention to begin with. We're not used to that type of exposure.
Tiffany Edwards, local reporter. These people are predators. Like this one journalist actually caught one of the judges in the bathroom at the urinal and was like asking him questions. And the judge was like, "Excuse me, can I please have some privacy?" And the journalist was like offended that he was asking for privacy. I mean, this is not how journalism started. Like you do it for press, you know?
I'll tell you what, when hard copy came and taped me, I taped them at the exact same time. I have every word I ever said on tape, so if they ever pull anything funny, they better watch their ass.
Wyoming Governor Jim Gurrieri, a first-term Republican up for re-election.
I am outraged and sickened by the heinous crime committed on Matthew Shepard. I extend my most heartfelt sympathies to the family.
Governor, you have pushed hate crime legislation in the past.
I would like to urge the people of Wyoming against overreacting in a way that gives one group special rights over others. We will wait and see if the vicious beating and torture of Matthew Shepard was motivated by hate.
You've got the beginning of the news story where they have graphics in the background. And they got murder in Wyoming and Wyoming dripping red. Like it's got blood on it or something. And you know, what is this? This is sensationalism. And we're here going, wait a minute. We had the guys in jail in less than a day. And I think that's pretty damn good.
And for us to be more or less maligned,
Eileen and Gil Engen.
that we're not a good community, and we are. The majority of people here are good people.
You get a few bad apples every once in a while. I think the gay community took this as an advantage, that this is a good time for us to exploit this.
Bill McKinney, father of one of the accused.
Had this been a heterosexual, these two boys decided to take out and rob, my son would have never made national news. Now he's guilty before he's even had a trial.
Look, I do think that the media is actually accountable. Because they make people think. And people were sitting in their homes, listening to CNN and watching Dan Rather, and going, Jesus Christ, but that's not how it is here. Well, how is it here?
Matthew Shepard, update at 3 p.m. Saturday, October 10th.
By this point, I looked out there, and where there had been 2 or 3 reporters, must have been 10 or 15 photographers, 10 video cameras, 20 or 30 reporters. The parents had just arrived. I had barely introduced myself to them. And I looked out there, and I thought, what am I going to do? Matthew Shepard was in critical condition at approximately 9:15 a.m., October 7th. When he arrived, he was unresponsive, and breathing support was being provided. Matthew's major injuries upon arrival consisted of hypothermia and a fracture from behind his head to just in front of his right ear. This has caused bleeding in the brain, as well as pressure on the brain. There's also lacerations on his head, face, and neck. Matthew's temperature has fluctuated over the last 24 hours, ranging from 98 to 106 degrees. We have had difficulty controlling the temperature. Matthew's parents arrived at 7 p.m., October 9th, and are now at his bedside. The following statement is from them. First of all, we would like to thank the American public for their kind thoughts about Matthew and their fond wishes for his speedy recovery. We appreciate your prayers and goodwill, and we know they are something that Matthew would appreciate too. We have a special request for all members of the media. Matthew is very much needed to his family at this time, and we ask you to respect our privacy, as well as Matthew's, so we can concentrate all of our efforts, thoughts, and love on our son. Thank you very much.